From the Media Broadcasting Center.
Here we go. This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, with my new JFK show with Gary King. Gary, you want to take it away?
Yeah, it's a new JFK show, number 84. We're approaching 100 shows now, and I think we've got a formidable team. We've got Larry Rivera, Don Fox. The dean of JFK is Dr. Fetzer. We just have to go ahead and give you the title. And,
Gary, have we got Larry and Don with us tonight?
Well, they know what time. I've talked to Don quite a few times, so he should be joining us shortly. Yeah. If not, we can handle it.
Where do you want to start, my friend?
Well, we do have some problems with Eugenio, which Don has some clips on that. But I would like to talk about Ed Tatro for a minute. And I've heard his presentation a couple of times, and what it appears to me is that it just seems too fantastic. We're talking about a kid, he was saying somewhere in his early 20s, who just happened to walk into the courtroom during the trial of the century, and he tapped Clay Shaw on the back and said something, and then suddenly he's talking to the judge, and the judge wants to talk to him back, in the back room, and then suddenly it just seems too fantastic to me. And
now, Gary, I don't know this story.
Yeah.
So why don't you lay out the whole story so we get the idea what you're telling us.
Okay, I don't know the story exactly, but here's what I can gather, having been through 2 conferences and listened to Ed Tatro speak. The story goes, he just so happened to be in New Orleans at the time of the Clay Shaw trial. A bunch of friends of his jumped in the back of a car and didn't have anything better to do, and they stopped in at the courtroom. And they walked in, and there's Clay Shaw. He said he's sitting right behind him. He taps him on the shoulder, and they talk. And he was amazed at how confident Clay Shaw was at the trial. And then, from what my understanding is that he said something to someone, possibly Clay Shaw or one of his attorneys, and it got back to the judge. So suddenly the judge became interested in Ed Tatro and brought him back in the chamber.
And you're telling me Ed Tatro is like a 20-year-old kid at this point in time?
That's what the story goes. Now,
was he in college? Was he in college, Gary? Was it like
something like that? Yeah, they were just young and having a good time, and they ended up there.
Spring break at the Jim Garrison Clay Shaw trial.
It looks like, yeah. I mean, I don't know how many bikinis they got there on Broad Street, but I don't know. Okay, so to continue on.
Larry has joined us.
All right. Yeah, Larry, we're talking about the story of Ed Tatro being at the Clay Shaw trial and basically talking to him, and then the judge became interested in Clay Shaw. I'm sorry, in Mr. Tatro. So,
Larry, let me ask, Larry, did you hear Ed Tatro give his talk at Judith's conference?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So
I'm interested in your take about it.
Incredible, fantastic, out of this world.
Yeah, so
was it credible?
Clay Shaw.
Gary,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Excuse me?
Was it credible?
Yes. Yeah. I enjoyed it very much. I thought it was one of the highlights of the conference.
Well,
I spoke to him briefly afterwards, and he sort of goes about JFK research on his own because of the personal implications, and some of the problems that he's had in the past with obvious persecution, and you know, what can you say? He's you know, I think I mentioned this the other day that at 22 he was in the courtroom, and he actually spoke with Clay Shaw's lawyers, and he was up there up close and personal. So
that was what Gary was focusing on. He found all that a little fantastic. I mean, you know, that he should be somehow in the middle of this thing, as it were, spontaneously.
He said that the judge brought him back into the chambers and started talking with Mr. Tatro. Now, the thing, as far as Ed Tatro, that caught my mind when I was at the conference listening to him talk, is when he said that Jim Garrison should have focused more on the mafia side of things. And then he said to the audience, but he knew that he would be sleeping with the fishes. And he said that, and everyone knows that in Louisiana. All right, but to me, there's a lot of places to go, like Permandex. And that to me is where the line is drawn. And to me, to have Jim Garrison be basically, he's chastised me. He said, I have problems. You know, I hate to tell you poor Jim Garrison people, but he was really not really on the right track. He should have went out to the mafia, but not one word of Permandex or anything like that. And I just find that whenever we have Joan Mellon, you see, Don and I kind of look at it a little different. See, when Joan Mellon's showing her picture with Jim Garrison, well, we know that his office was one of the most heavily infiltrated offices that there is. So when I'm hearing that a 22-year-old kid who just happened to be riding around with his buddies ended up inside the trial of the century, and suddenly, because he knows so much or said something, he's talking with the judge, I just find it a little fantastic. And I just wish they would go further. And on top of that, I remember in New Orleans saying, what do you think of Larry's work? And he completely does not believe in all your work of Oswald in the Doorway. So I just wonder about Ed Tatro.
Well, after the conference, he came up to me. In fact, while Judith was doing her final presentation, he came up to the mic in the question and answer session, and he said that he believed that not only was it Lee Oswald's shirt, but that he knows Marina Oswald very well, and that Marina herself had confirmed to him that that was Lee Oswald's shirt. So I guess in a roundabout way, he confirmed that he believes that it's the man in the doorway is Lee Oswald.
Well, that's a huge turnaround from New Orleans to Dallas. So I'm actually pleased to hear that he did say that.
But that doesn't speak to his familiarity with Larry's work, or Judith's for that matter, about confirming through a pixelation study that it was not red and black checkered shirt that our friend Groden photographed Billy wearing, or that, you know, Larry had carried this so he had the gifts that show the Oswald face fills up
and if
poor man's image and Billy's does not.
And if you remember, in New Orleans, he said he had seen this work. It was in our earlier stages because it come so far in a short period of time. But he was the one that told us that he had seen it already, and he rejected Oswald being in the doorway. So maybe we need to invite Ed Tatro on the show. I'm gonna email David Denton tonight, and I would like to have Ed Tatro on the show so we could, you know, see what he has to say.
Well, he, like I said, I wish we would have had, in retrospect, I wish we would have had more time to present more there, but that's you know, on the agenda, you know, for the future. So
can you back a half a foot away from the camera, Larry? You're yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, maybe. Do you have any more light? Your face is very dark.
Yeah, I'll try to do that.
It's almost like a Halloween mask.
So
tell us about that picture in the background.
What picture?
It's the painting. Did you paint that?
Oh yeah, it's a painting. Yeah.
The
It's going
waterfall.
to be a famous painting because you're going to have broken more JFK news in front of that painting in the history of mankind. So it may be a very collectible.
Don, you weren't in Dallas, were you, Don? You weren't in Dallas. So you didn't.
Don has never been to Dealey Plaza. We got to get on.
I was not there. No, I was not there.
So go ahead and admit it, Don. You've never been to Dealey Plaza.
I have not made it there yet. I will be there hopefully next year. I think I'm kind of shooting for next year.
Mm-hmm. Well, got to make it sometime. I don't know.
So Larry, you think that's a good idea for us to invite Ed Tatro to come on the show?
If he'll agree to come on the show, he's got a lot of mileage in JFK. You know, like I said, he did a lot of the early work on. I mean, he wrote so many different articles for the continuing inquiry for Penn Jones starting in the 70s, and he was in touch with Roger Craig for a long time. In fact, up until the day that Craig supposedly committed suicide, he was teaching high school students at the time, and he received news of Roger Craig's demise during a session, of teaching schools in the classroom, and he has original correspondence with Roger Craig, and he's written about this. So
does he believe Roger Craig committed suicide?
I don't think so. But he does believe everything that Craig said about the Rambler and about the Fritz encounter in Fritz's office, and so.
All right, well, we'll see if he'll come on the show. He was on Seamus Coogan's show, so
if he went on with Seamus Coogan, who is about as despicable as they come, he certainly should come on.
He was on what is it, Don? What's the name of the show?
Which one?
The Dallas.
Dallas Action with. I used to listen to that. What's his name?
So he went on there a couple of times. And Seamus.
Ed Tatro's been on there quite a few times with. Rob Clark is the other guy. Rob Clark is the lone gunman, and then
Rob.
Rob Clark or whatever, and then
Clark, I think it's Clark Rob.
I think it's Rob.
He is the worst shield of all time.
He's pretty bad. Yeah. And then there's the other guy with the Dallas Action. Yeah, he's been on Black Op a few times.
Yeah, he's the guy that plays guitar with Zach Wild. Remember all that?
Yep.
So there you go. All right. Well, looks like we're still having trouble with Black Op Radio, Don. You brought us a clip.
Yeah. Okay. So you haven't played the clip yet? Yeah.
No. You tell us all about it, Don. Set it up.
Okay. So I still listen to Black Op Radio. More now just to kind of see what Jim DiEugenio's up to, because he's
we commend you for that.
I guess somebody's got to do it.
Anymore. I really cannot bear to listen anymore. So I'm glad that you do this.
It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
It's a nasty job.
Well, once in a while, it does piss me off. I try to keep a professional attitude while I'm listening to it while I'm driving around. But once in a while, I got the MP3 player in, and I'm driving down the road, and the knuckles, they kind of grip that steering wheel.
You're going to get arrested for, what do they call it, when you're driving really angry?
Road
rage.
Road rage, yeah. Hey, he's going 45, but he's raging.
So tell us about this clip. Tell us about your clip, Don.
So Jim DiEugenio is kind of a guy. He used to be a movie critic, so now he thinks it's his job to vet all the research in the JFK community, and that kind of stance has kind of pissed me off. I mean, I know everyone has heard, hey, all this infighting in JFK really sucks. I'm like, you know what? Why would you agree with most of these people?
It's always been like that. There's always been infighting from day one.
Yeah, and even if there was no shills, I mean, what we're not running a cult here, I mean, people are allowed to have a different opinion. And Jim DiEugenio is out to ridicule anyone that doesn't see everything the exact same way he does. And he answers email questions from the listeners, and he got one from T-Bone in Atlanta. And T-Bone was wondering, hey, why doesn't anybody talk about Israel? And DiEugenio is like, well, that's really controversial. And then on the other hand, he's going, well, there's no evidence for it. So I'm like, well, what is it, Jim? It's either there's no evidence or it's controversial. Which is it? You know, you can't have both. So he's kind of going around in circles. So I think we should play that clip. And then I got a PowerPoint I sent to Chance. I don't know if he got it yet. And we can just, oh, you don't have the clip.
Can you send him the clip, Don?
Yeah, I can send it again. I sent it 3-4 days ago. I can resend it.
Could you play it there?
It's not on this computer. Hold on.
Yeah, give me a second. I might be able to play it.
Okay. Yeah, you got it, Gary.
I'll just keep on going now.
Okay, so all right, we'll get somebody to play it, and so Jim's like, well, I'm not convinced that Israel was involved in all of this, and what we're gonna do is we'll listen to Jim DiEugenio, and then we're gonna break down. You know, this will be quick. It's not gonna take all the rest of the show. I think I could spend about 10 minutes. We're just gonna do a cursory kind of overview of Jewish involvement in the JFK assassination.
That's fine. Go for it.
So
Yeah.
Gary's almost got our clip. So, you know, I don't want to speak for Jim DiEugenio, so we'll let him speak for himself. Absolutely. Yep.
Well, in the meantime, Jim, I want to address one of the questions that popped up on YouTube regarding Billy Lovelady and a show that we did last year, and it had to do with Billy's problems at Andrews Air Force Base, and supposedly my surmising that he had been court-martialed, and how I could surmise, because that's the word that was used, and it wasn't anything about surmising. It was more a thing of inferring because of the documents that I found via FOIA request, and this had to do with the Andrews Air Force Base gang that Billy Lovelady was a part of, and Billy Lovelady was along with Paul Krause and Charles Williams. All these guys were 22 years old at the time, and this is taken from Washington Post articles of the day, June the 11th, 1961, which I'm citing here, and the other one is dated September the 28th, 1960, and it had to do with this gang of airmen who were stealing items from base, because they worked in the warehouses there, you know, and they were stealing sheets, for example, bed sheets and blankets, masking tape. I mean, real petty stuff, you know, and they were selling it off base, okay, to make money.
This wasn't a heist of gold bullion.
Of course not. Of course not. But from that, they graduated to handguns, okay, revolvers. And
that's serious. That's federal crime there.
That's right. So, and this is all, you know, this is all taken from a Washington Post article of September the 28th, 1960. If you go to the Washington Post and search their archives, you know, you can download this article, which is what I did as part of my research. And they stole these 4.38 caliber revolvers, and they went to a bar and they tried to fence them there, you know. So apparently the people there, you know, reported them to the authorities, and the FBI got involved. Not only was the FBI, but it was let's see, Office of Special Investigations got involved in this thing. Okay, so anyway, they went through the process, and afterwards, you know, they were fined, okay, in civil court, and after that, I went and tried to get their Army records, and of all three of them, since there was this fire at the NPRC in 1971, which certain surnames, the records had been destroyed in the fire, including the Lovelady and Williams. But Krause, which begins with a C, his records were still available. And when I went in and got a hold of his records, there is an area that says transcript of court-martial trial. Okay, and in the box is filled in. It says not in file. Of all of the other records that I had examined, when you look at the transcript of court-martial file, it says N.A., not available, because there never was a court-martial. But in this case, it said not in file. So the inference clearly to me is that Paul Ray Krause, was court-martialed. Okay, so if you go and you infer why this happened, you know, obviously this happened because of the gun running case at Andrews. And if Paul Krause was separated from the Air Force via court-martial, then it's a pretty good chance that Billy Lovelady and Charles Wilkins were also.
I think you made a very reasonable inference. In all probability, they would have received bad conduct discharges.
That's right, dishonorable discharges. Exactly.
Oh, bad conduct. It's different, Larry. It's a bad conduct. It's other than honorable, but it's not the same thing as dishonorable. It's bad conduct.
Well, and duty status, it says discharge. Okay, so that would be the equivalent of dishonorable discharge. I consulted with a friend of mine who was in the Air Force for 20 years, and he said that basically what that meant is that you know, just get out of here. We don't want anything to do with you. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, to address that,
I think you had sufficient evidence to warrant the inference. Obviously, not conclusive, but probable. I mean, you had enough evidence, I think, to suggest that it appears as though he was subject to a court-martial and a discharge that was other than honorable.
That's right. That's right. So that addresses that. And as we all know, the other thing is that when he skipped bail, when he skipped town after not paying the balance of his fine, the FBI started looking for him, okay, on behest of the district attorney. Okay, so that is very clear in all of the documentation that I examined, which I have possession of. And that he was arrested at the Texas School Book Depository Company, not at the building at 411 Elm Street, mind you, but at the Daltex building, because they had not yet made the move over to 411 Elm Street. And he was arrested in January 7th or the 8th, I believe, in 1963. And that Billy Lovelady had been on the lam. Okay, he had disappeared from Maryland, and he had been on the lam. And while he was on the lam, he was hired at the Texas School Book Depository Company in December of 1961. So he spent all of 1962 as a fugitive, you know, working for the TSBD company. I mean, and that is something that we're going to discuss hopefully in the near future with Bill Weston. But I find that to be extremely suspicious in light of the fact that the company frowned upon hiring these type of employees, people who had dishonorable or questionable discharges from the military in any way.
But I think that the intelligence agencies may find it useful to have these compromised individuals on their payroll because they can more easily manipulate them.
Absolutely, Jim. And not only that, when you look at the fact that they needed alternate patsies for November the 22nd, you know, that would have made a perfect background, you know, to be a potential patsy in my mind.
That's very good, Larry. We'll no doubt return to this subject. Gary, do you have the audio set up?
I think I do. I had it, and then it got away from me for a second.
Can you play it?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. And
This is T-Bone from Atlanta.
I hear that voice.
And I very much appreciate. But I was wondering, why does nobody ever take a glance at Israel? Is there something that I'm missing in this indictment of myself? Okay, Israel seems to be the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. If it were the Irish or the Brazilians that work for someone, I think they would be. So even if we agree that the country is taken over by militants as an end in themselves, and I've learned that, you know, I'm not all pro-Jesus or anti-devil, I've certainly learned that you show me a point that the Israeli lobby did wrest away power in the United States. Okay, this is a very controversial idea. I don't have to tell anybody how controversial it is, but we don't shy away from controversy on this show. First of all, let me say this. I've of late, because a few months ago, I was going to write a major article on Israel for Bob Perry's site. I ended up giving up on it because it's such a complex, deep subject that I would have had to read about 9 books, okay? And although Bob's a great guy and everything, I really didn't want to spend that much time on that particular subject. You know, you can only devote so much time, you know, to a few things. But I'm glad although I abandoned the project, I'm glad I did it because I really, really learned a lot about it at that time, things that I didn't know before. I will be the first person to say that the Israeli lobby exercises way too much power in the United States. I'll take a back seat to nobody on that issue. I don't think there's any question about it. You know, as to why that is, there's a lot of different reasons, But it's simply a fact of life. In my opinion, it's wrong. I mean, no country, especially a country the size of Israel, should exercise that much influence in internal politics in America because it tends to distort things. I will also say this. As I've learned more and more about Kennedy's foreign policy, I consider this to be another reversal of Kennedy's foreign policy. If you take a look at the Rakove book, the Robert Rakove book, and I really do hope that people read that book and Philip Muhlenbeck's book, Betting on the Africans, okay, because that's the latest research on Kennedy's foreign policy. The Robert Rakove book, Kennedy, Johnson, and the Non-Aligned World, has a very interesting take on this particular issue. And Kennedy was not going to tilt either way in the Israeli-Palestinian issue. He was going to go ahead and in his first term, he was going to be sure to refuse that Israel get any kind of atomic weapons. And secondly, he was working at trying to reach out to the non-fanatical Arab leaders in the Middle East, like Nasser. And he was also seriously thinking of trying to get rid of the Shah. And he did not like Saudi Arabia at all. The monarch of Saudi Arabia came to the United States to get medical treatment. And in fact, the hospital he went to was I believe, either in JFK's home state of Massachusetts or right next door. And one of his State Department advisors says, you have to go see the king of Saudi Arabia since he's here. And you know, Kennedy said, why? That's what he thought of Saudi Arabia. Now, of course, once Kennedy's assassinated, Johnson at first, and then Nixon and Kissinger even worse, completely reversed Kennedy's policy there until we become essentially partners and allies of Israel, to the point that, you know, I think Kennedy would have thrown up at how imbalanced it became. And in 1966, I think, Nasser broke relations with the United States over Johnson's favoring Israel so much in the Middle East, okay? So, yes, that is a very, very powerful issue, I believe, and a very important issue. Now, having said all that, I've researched the JFK case in a very, very serious way since about 1991. So you're talking well over 20 years. From about 1975 to about 1991, I was a very moderate kind of reader on the case. In all those years, I've never ever been able to come up with any serious evidence that either Israel or the Mossad was a part of the JFK plot. I mean, people who advocate for that, they talk about Piper's book, the late author, I think his name was Michael Collins Piper, okay, who wrote a book about his belief that the Mossad was involved in the JFK case. And by the way, you can get his book online, but it was Final Judgment. That was the name of it. You can actually read it online. I just didn't think it was very convincing. I just didn't think it was very convincing at all. So it's not that it's the elephant in the room. It's just that, you know, nobody is serious about this case, has never found any evidence of that. One of the most unfortunate parts of the fringe part of the JFK case, okay, is that some of these people are trying to find just that. I won't name them right now, but I will in an upcoming article.
Yeah, I know who that is.
Gary, let's turn over
All right, fellas. Looks like we're making a difference.
to Don. Go for it.
Okay, so DiEugenio, according to him, we're you know, or me specifically probably, is a fringe part of the JFK case. Well, okay, let's just do kind of a no-brainer. We're not going to dig real deep into any aspect of it here. We're going to just do kind of a cursory overview of the JFK assassination. So I've got a PowerPoint queued up. Chance says the audience can see it, but you guys won't be able to. I did try to email it to you, so maybe you can follow along at home.
Just tell us what we're looking at.
Yeah, okay, Chance, do you have it on the first slide?
Yeah, these shows are radio shows too, so you want to go ahead and describe it as if it were a radio show.
Yeah. So, okay, Chance, do you have the PowerPoint up? It is on screen. Okay, awesome. Okay, so we're on the first slide here. So this is just the limo is kind of the title slide. So if you want to go to the second slide, Chance. And this shows a cartoon Jew and sitting in front of a whole pile of gold coins. And really, you know, you would think this would be kind of a basic part of the case, but why did JFK go to Dallas in the first place? Why was he there on November 22nd, 1963? Well, he was there to raise money. Well, who was he pandering to? He was pandering to the wealthy Jewish Democratic donors that were in Dallas. That was kind of the Dallas ruling class, was these wealthy Democratic Jews. So that's what he was there for. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Chance. Number 3 here, we've got. Okay, here's Sam Bloom. You know, we've talked about him before, but we'll just go over it again here. So Sam Bloom is the guy that got the motorcade route changed. Instead of going down Main Street, he got it to go down Elm, right in front of the school book building and in front of the Daltex building, right into the kill zone there on Elm Street. And he also made sure that the motorcade route was published in the papers. Okay, then the next slide is the Daltex building itself, and quite a few people have been talking about online on the 3rd floor window. Typically, a lot of people thought it was the 2nd floor, but apparently on the 3rd floor there was broken glass, and there was some activity seen there. In any event, the uranium mining company was owned by wealthy Jewish people, as was the Daltex building as a whole. And the uranium mining company also provided nuclear material for Israel's nuclear weapons program.
You're talking about in the Daltex?
Yep.
I thought that was a CIA asset.
Mossad.
Mossad.
Yep. That whole building was.
That's very significant, Don.
Yeah, we could probably do a whole show on the Daltex building, but for tonight we'll leave it at that, and then we'll go to the 5th slide, which is our guy Abraham Zapruder, and of course he was Jewish, and he also worked in the Daltex building, and a lot of scholars think he was he had foreknowledge of the assassination, and he would later go on to receive his family got a massive payoff for the Zapruder film from none other than Ken Feinberg, kind of a heavy hitter Jewish lawyer,
He was for Katrina. He settled Katrina and the BP oil spills. It's just to show you how far he goes back.
Yeah, Feinberg was also in on 9/11 and the Penn State sex scandal as well.
He gets around, doesn't he?
He certainly does. Yeah. So
you got Feinstein in your town. Your town is in deep trouble. I mean, BP. How bad can it be?
Okay, and then we'll go to the next slide, Chance, number 6, and this is Yitzhak Rabin.
Yeah.
And he was in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, according to his widow, Leah.
Rabin was in Dallas the day JFK was shot.
Yeah. So if you were going to, and shortly after the JFK assassination, Rabin was promoted to the head of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. And shortly thereafter that, he was prime minister. He actually did 2 terms as prime minister. And believe it or not, he was seen as more of a moderate figure in Israeli politics. And the more hardline elements, they assassinated him back in '95.
Yeah, that was one of the most outrageous and blatant assassinations ever, where the gunman walks up behind him right through Rabin's security guard.
Yep.
Yeah.
So now, are we digging really deep here to find Mossad Israeli involvement?
Well, you tell us, Don. What do you got?
Okay, so we'll go to the next one.
I mean, Rabin, you know, what else could he have been in town for? I mean, he's not he's not a wealthy Dallas politician who's donating to JFK.
No, he wasn't there for a sightseeing tour. You know, he wasn't there to get JFK's autograph. I mean, obviously he was in on some level of the operation or other.
This is very, very disturbing to me.
Yeah, we're just gonna, we're gonna throw out some data points here, and you can kind of connect your own dots. And then, okay, shortly after the assassination, we're on slide 7 now, and this shows Lyndon Johnson getting sworn in on Air Force One. Standing next to Jackie Kennedy, who's still got blood all over her, by the way.
That's right.
And Lyndon Johnson was a crypto Jew and a Freemason. So
bad combination.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
Don, but you got to be showing. It should be showing the Al Thomas Wink photograph, which is the one photograph which never got really disseminated in newspapers.
Oh, that's the only one for which the negative is missing from the Johnson Library.
Yep. Okay, and then we'll go to the next slide. This is number 8, and this is one we've had this one on before, but I think it's worth bringing up again. It's Jack Ruby at the midnight press conference, and he's standing there next to a bunch of Israeli reporters. Apparently, and asked why he was there, he said he was serving as an interpreter for these Israeli reporters.
Did he say that?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And how many Israeli reporters just happened to show up on the scene in Dallas after JFK was assassinated?
They got there pretty fast.
Cover the motorcade?
No, they got there pretty fast, didn't they?
I would say, Larry, this is dumbfounding.
Well,
this is the most, Don, you're already laying out the most powerful evidence I've ever heard of Israeli complicity already here tonight.
Yeah, it's just some, we're not even digging that deep. And well, think about it. This is like the Wellstone where the FBI guys were in Duluth.
That's right.
I mean, here they are. And then, okay, so if you're an Israeli reporter and you need a translator, so are you going to go get a strip club owner to translate for you?
Seems like a stretch.
Yeah. Or was Jack Ruby a Mossad operative, which I think he was. Okay, then we'll go to the next slide, and it shows Oswald.
Very, very, very interesting speculation, Don. I'm fascinated. You got my attention.
Okay, I thought you might like this show. And here's Lee Oswald, and we see a picture of him in Dallas police custody, and he's got it's like a fat lip. He got punched in the nose and then over the eye as well. Probably both eyes, it looks like.
All the easier to identify the suspect in a lineup.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. And then who do you think arranged for Oswald's transfer in public from the Dallas police station to the county jail?
To set him up for the shooting?
No, it was from City Hall. Yeah, it was.
It was none other than Sam Bloom.
That guy gets around.
Yeah. And how many people talk about Sam Bloom in JFK research.
Very, very rare.
Yeah, and okay, this is again now we're talking about Sam Bloom. Piper talks a lot about Sam Bloom, and we just heard Eugenio say, "Well, it's not very convincing." Well, just on Sam Bloom alone, Piper hits it out of the park. Okay, then if we go to the next slide, Chance, number 10, this shows Ruby shooting Oswald in the basement of the Dallas police station.
I think some of us have seen that one.
Yeah, that's a pretty famous one. And Jack Ruby, of course, was Jewish. His real name was Rubenstein. And, you know, a little known fact was that Jack Rubenstein, was shipping contraband, i.e. drugs and guns, into Israel back in the mid-50s.
Along with Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah, Lyndon Johnson was doing it in the 30s and 40s, I think. And
Cuba. So
yep. So do we not think, okay, if you're shipping guns and drugs and you're a mobster, do you not think that that's intelligence work right there? I mean, to me right there, that almost cements the case that Ruby was actually a Mossad operative. And so here we have a Jewish Mossad operative shooting the patsy in the basement of the Dallas.
John, to tell the truth, the thought had never even crossed my mind before. This is a revelation.
No kidding.
Yeah, this is fascinating.
With the mob being, you know, the big cloud, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's where Piper is so good about distinguishing between the Italian mafia, you know, Giancana, Cavalcante, and Marcello, and the Jewish crime syndicate run by Meyer Lansky. I mean, that's the most important distinction he draws there.
Yeah, and it turns out Jack Ruby was also on the Edgar Bronfman payroll as well, who was a big player in Perm Index with Clay Shaw.
Yeah.
And, okay, so then we'll go to slide 11 here, and this is one, you know, I had this one before, but it's another good point to make that it doesn't make any sense that the Zionist elite that controls the U.S. media would cover up the JFK conspiracy for the Italian mafia, the CIA, or the anti-Castro Cubans. The Zionist-controlled media is most likely covering up the conspiracy in order to protect Zionist criminals who masterminded the assassination of President Kennedy. So,
well, I don't know that they mastermind, but, you know, having an important role in carrying it off, I'm now becoming increasingly persuaded that that was the case.
Well, every time I'm at a conference, at the very end, they'll go, and make no mistake, it was a coup d'etat. Now, I'm just a Cajun from Cutoff, but that means somebody took over the country, if I'm not mistaken. So, who? And there is everything you need to know.
Well, Jim, I believe at Santa Barbara, you were one of the very first to introduce the Israel angle in this whole thing.
Well, yes, perhaps in a national conference that might be the case. But obviously, yeah. Piper had been banging the drum for, you know, a decade and a half.
Well, actually, I remember you saying that there was more research needed. And it has not received enough attention heretofore.
Right, and Perm Index, yes.
Right, I do remember that well. That was a life-changing conference, and you did say it was one of the few conferences that would have enduring value. And so pretty much, can you think of any conference that happened on the anniversary that is making any difference today, other than ours? I mean, I wasn't any part of it. It was you guys. I was just a spectator there.
Well, I think we managed to accomplish quite a lot in Santa Barbara. So much that I'm no longer invited to conferences.
You can forget it. You can forget it. No, Lorraine Fenton did say that you and Larry and possibly Don Fox and me will be invited next year, and no Grodin, because like I said last time, we were looking at each other going, do you hear him in there making fun of us? And like I said, she had just been inducted into the Oswald Innocence campaign. And so he was talking to the wrong girl, because she had Larry on her show for a couple of hours and was more than convinced after after that show.
I think Don has a few loose ends he wants to tie together.
Yeah, we'll just get a couple slides here, and then you guys can do your thing.
Yeah, we have some questions we've been trying to get to for about a year now.
Yeah, well, next week we can get the whole thing. This D. Eugenio was just too irresistible.
Well, I think what you're explaining about the Jewish angle in Dallas is of fantastic importance. I'm very, very glad.
Sure. Okay, we got some more good stuff here. Slide 12. And this shows your guy, Arlen Specter, who is, guess what? Yeah, Jewish. And he was a junior counsel on the Warren Commission. He came up with the single bullet theory, which is, as Gary knows, the greatest fraud ever perpetrated on the American public.
We're quoting Jim Garrison.
Yep. Yeah. Gary and I about once a month we'll recite that on the phone when over different phone.
In harmony. I say the upper third.
Okay, so then we'll go to the slide 13. We've just got a few left here. And here's Clay Shaw. He was the only person ever publicly prosecuted for JFK's murder. Shaw's handler was Louis M. Bloomfield, who was Jewish. And more importantly, he was a front man for Jewish oligarch Edgar Bronfman. And that's basically your perm index connection to the assassination right there, kind of in a nutshell. And then we'll go to slide 14. And here's the Sunday Times of London. This was a big story back in the mid-'80s. The headline reads, "Revealed: The Secrets of Israel's Nuclear Arsenal." So as we all know, and we've covered that before, where JFK wanted to put the kibosh on any nuclear weapons for Israel, while David Ben-Gurion, who was kind of the founding father of Israel, was pushing real hard to get the bomb. Otherwise, he didn't think Israel was going to make it. He said he couldn't sleep at night knowing he didn't have the bomb. Okay, then we'll go to 15.
By the way, I just realized you sent me the slide set, so I'm looking.
Yep.
That first photograph is from what, JFK? At the limousine. That's not Ruder. That's a fake.
Yeah, it was just a photograph I found online just for...
I think it's probably a bad idea to use it because it's not authentic.
Yeah,
I'm looking at these others. These are good photographs. Yeah, I see what you're talking about.
This is more of a cursory kind of a...
Right.
This is no in-depth.
But somebody could look at that first photo and think it was legit when it's not.
I was wondering about that with the motorcycle up there that close.
Yeah, it's not. It's a fake. It's probably from JFK. And then you repeat it, of course, because it's used here in this other image. And then Arlen Specter, and then Clay Shaw. Now the Sunday Times. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep,
that's where we are, I think, right?
Yep. Yeah, we just got done with that, and then go to 15, and then that's the that's a photo. Yep.
Inside Dimona.
Yep, this is a photograph from Mordecai Vanunu. He got back in the early to mid 80s, and this is when the U.S. inspectors went to Dimona. They had the Israelis had cemented the elevator bank shut, and nobody could get down to the lower level where the real action was going on. They built a whole fake control room to show the U.S. inspectors. But here's a photo from Vanunu.
Well, is this the fake control room?
This is the real deal. This is why Vanunu did about, was it 14 years, I think, in solitary confinement. And this is an actual real deal.
Solitary confinement is an especially psychologically, mentally brutal form of treatment, to cut off interaction with other human beings. That's really disgusting.
Well, that's our friends, our allies in the Middle East. Yeah. And then the last photo, the last slide here's the USS Liberty.
Liberty.
Yep. And this is the one where LBJ and Israel took out our ship, and the was it the Air Force or the Navy had sent some planes to
the Navy. They were from
the Navy. Yeah, and then
they were from a carrier. Yeah.
Okay, coming off a carrier, they were going to drive the attackers away, but Johnson got on the phone and told them to recall the wings, and they couldn't believe it. And Johnson said, "I want that goddamn ship going to the bottom." And the plan was to sink the Liberty, then blame the attack on Egypt, and then they'd have
draw the U.S. into the war.
They could nuke Cairo.
The windows you have circled on the Dell text, Don, are not the windows from which the shots were fired.
Well, there's like I mentioned earlier. A, I didn't circle them. B, other people have been saying that there's broken glass up there on that third floor.
Yeah, well, this is a bad picture of the Dell text. It's very misleading, in my opinion.
Well, there was quite a few people. I ran into several people that thought there was some action going on there on that third floor.
Well, you just got it located. You mean there as well as from the window of the closet of the uranium mining, not from which the shots were fired, which was framed by the fire escape?
Yep, there was broken glass on that third floor window, and people could see the outline.
Okay. Well, we only have. Did you have more you wanted to add?
That was it. That was my last slide. So,
Larry, you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention there that if you look at the black man there that's on the fire escape, he's been there's a dark splotch there in front of him, and that's something that Dennis Camino noticed a couple of years ago, and we don't have an image of that, do we here? No, but in the Alchin 6, which is right there in that area.
This is a photo of from a very different angle, Larry.
Yeah, I can see it, and he's circled. Yeah, right. But from the Alchin 6 photograph, there's that image of the black man that's there on the
fire escape.
And there's a huge dark splotch there right in front of him, and nobody really talks about that. So that could have been hiding something going on there also.
So yeah, I guess my overall thing was not to pinpoint shooters in a certain window with this presentation.
Yeah.
Just to show, hey, from A to Z, in key roles, we've got Jewish people in the plot, from beginning to end.
And the cover.
Yeah, to the cover up with the media and the Warren Commission. They were in there from A to Z.
Well, very good.
This photograph seems to be later in that day during the afternoon or something.
Yeah.
What people were talking about was they could see the broken glass there on the bottom of that window.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's sort of jagged there. Yeah.
Yep, very conspicuous. Why is there broken glass in that window? Well, there can on November 22nd, 1963. Well, we know shots came from that building. So there could have been shooters on the second and the third floor. I believe
that's where those women are hanging out of the in the Alchins. I believe that's the same window where you see those three women precisely in that window. I'd like to look at that Alchins again, and compared to this photograph, it's very interesting because I think that's exactly where those three women that are waving out, and some people think that they were pointing at some kind of device, exploding device that had been thrown out of the Texas School Book Depository to attract attention, obviously, to divert attention.
Oh, that firecracker before everything started.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember, the sound of a bullet passing through the windshield sounds like a firecracker. So
that's what I had always thought too. But maybe.
Yeah, but I'm talking about well before when the motorcade was making the turn at Houston on Elm.
Are those streamers going across? The streamers.
Right. Yeah, streamers and firecrackers and explosions, which is another reason. And I believe somebody had posted this question of why use the Alchin 6 photograph, and I think the reason for that is because obviously the Secret Service agents are all looking in that direction in response to some kind of noise or backfire or firecracker which had been thrown in that area. So that answers that, at the same time, because somebody posted that question: why use the Alton 6 photograph if it shows Oswald in the doorway? The reason being because Landis and Reddy and the other guy were looking in the direction, and that's where they had the patsy already arranged. So that's why.
That was one of the questions we had for tonight. So we have just maybe about 5 minutes left, so maybe we can get to a couple of them. All right, Dr. Professor, this is from the Santa Barbara video number 6, your presentation. It says, didn't Mac Wallace, in fact, attend the University of Texas and not Yale? From what I've learned over the years, Mac was not a member of Skull and Bones. I would like to see this matter cleared. Go ahead, Dr. Professor.
Well, this really originates with Richard Hook, who had this photograph that appears to be Mac Wallace at Skull and Bones. And, that picture looks like Mac Wallace to me. Now, I wrote to Richard and anticipated of this question that he might help me to understand, but he did not respond. And I hope still to hear from him, but I'm going to have to say that apparently Mac Wallace played a big role on the campus of the University of Texas. So
absolutely,
it's unclear to me whether he was made an honorary member of Skull and Bones. The photo looks legitimate to me. So I have a hard time reconciling this myself.
I think what it was some kind of congregation of similar groups at Yale, and it wasn't necessarily. It was not necessarily Skull and Bones, but similar-minded associations and groups at universities. Jim, I think that's what Richard pointed out.
Okay, we got one more question.
So it was a legit photo of him at Yale, but he wasn't a member of Skull and Bones. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. That's right.
Okay, we've got 2 questions if we can squeeze it in. All right, this is a little long, but pay attention here. All right, this one is for Larry, and this one comes from the Billy Lovelady JFK show number 45. It says,
we answered that.
What's that?
We answered that earlier.
No, this is different, I think. It says, too much surmising. Rivera surmises that Lovelady was court-martialed.
Yeah. We already did that, Gary.
We did that while you were looking for the audio. While you were looking for the audio, we answered that.
Okay,
we covered that.
Last question then. Yep. All right. So this is for Don. This comes from the Permandex video that he made. He said, so one would come to the conclusion that Oliver Stone's JFK show is really disinformation. Although it does take you basically a quarter of the way up the ladder of truth, it is really meant to steer you away from the Zionists, Rothschild international banking criminals. Who
look. I'll answer that one, Gary. Oliver Stone did a masterpiece. He got closer to the truth than anyone else has ever through the major mass media. He deserves accolades. It would have been the picture of the year. But for Jack Valenti, a former aide to Lyndon Johnson, who married one of his secretaries whom Lyndon had impregnated, subverting it for the best picture, it deserved it. It was a remarkable piece of work for its time, especially when Oliver was placing a lot of dependence on Robert Rodin about the authenticity of the Zapruder film, and that Oswald was not the man in the doorway. I think such limitations as occur here, independent of the subsequent proof about, the limo stop and all that Larry has done, that it was a masterpiece for its time. And with that, gentlemen, I want to say how much I appreciate your good work. I think these informal conversations are valuable, and we'll continue next week to answer questions coming from those who have been following our work. This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, thanking my special guests, Gary King, Don Fox, Larry Rivera, for the new JFK show, the number of which, Gary, is?
Number 84. We're on the way to the century mark.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for watching.